Hi, my name is Paul McGillick. I'm Editorial Director of InDesign Publishing. Thank you all for coming, and a personal thanks to Artisan for inviting me and all the speakers today. Artisan, I'm told the full name is Artisan Idea Skill Product. This is the second in a series of seminars. The first was held in 2007. It's the Live in Queensland Design World program. This series is sponsored by QUT Creative Industries and Qantas, which is the official airline for Artisan. Just very briefly, the protocols, as it were, this morning. In your handbook, you'll see the timing for each speaker. You don't see question and answers built into this program, but hopefully there may be time, or if there is time between the end of one speaker and the next, we might have some questions and answers. I hope to be fairly strict in my arrest, as it were, in terms of timing, otherwise we won't get through everything. I'm not a speaker today. I'm just in charge of getting the ball rolling and keeping it rolling, but I guess part of my job is to try and set up a context for what we're going to talk about today. So I gave quite some thought to this, and I got not very far at all until I had a few drinks in a very expensive restaurant last night and came up with a few ideas. And I started thinking that if our topic today is design inspired by nature, if you think about it, of course, we've always been, as human beings, involved with nature, and in the past we've been much closer to nature, I guess, in many respects, if not most respects, than we are today. But I guess we also today live in a period of growing consciousness about a kind of a new understanding of the ecology in which we live, because we, as far as the evidence seems to indicate, we're going through a crisis in terms of our relationship with the environment which we share. The other interesting thing about it, I thought along these lines, was that in a sense, because we are a part of the very thing we're observing, we are a part of nature ourselves. So we were speaking earlier with Stephen about this strange philosophical issue, which probably we won't get to today, about in what sense then are we different or separate from nature. So I was thinking over my second wine last night, and I sort of came up with a number of themes. So I'm just interested to see how many of these themes, if any of them at all, come through. And these are just my themes, really. And I came up with 7 of them. We have 9 speakers. I would have liked to come up with 9 convenient themes. I've only got 7. So I thought, well, what are they? The first theme I thought was, well, inspiration, which is the name being used today, which is to say creating something with nature as a springboard to it. When I left Sydney yesterday, I was in the throes of getting a magazine to bed, as we say, and I noticed there were 2 stories, for example, alone in that issue of InDesign. A new chair by a Dutch designer called Qantas, called the Coral Chair, and this is a chair inspired by crystal structures, and specifically coral. And then there's another story on the Corniche Tower in Abu Dhabi by Vasa, which is inspired by the faceting of diamonds. So those are 2 examples just from my own magazine, which is about to go to press. Then I thought, well, there are other things, aren't there? I mean, if you think about it, I know today we're primarily concerned with design, but if you think about art, we think about the sublime and romanticism. These are clear examples of nature inspiring art. I was thinking about musical examples. So if you think about Schmittner's Mavlast with the famous Moldau movement, which so wonderfully captures the surge of that river as it passes under the bridges of Prague. So that was one theme. The second theme was nature providing raw materials, and I was flicking through a book which I'm sure some of you know probably better than I do, called Natural Architecture by Alessandro Rocca, which is a very interesting survey of the different aspects of how nature provides raw materials and how architecture imitates, if that's the right word, probably it isn't, but imitates nature. And then if I go back to my musical examples, I mean, Beethoven famously collected bird calls, which were the beginning of so many of the themes in his work. My third example, my third theme, I should say, is that nature as an analogue, and drawing analogies with nature. And one of my favourite writers is the Finnish architect and architectural philosopher Juhani Pallasmaa. And Pallasmaa talks about these things, and Mick Pearce, who's about to speak, knows a hell of a lot more about this than I do. But if you think about some of the things that Pallasmaa talks about, he says, well, ants and roadways, or termites in covered streets, termites in deep wells, heating and moisture regulating systems, termites, bees and ants, stairways and ramps, termites, hinged doors, trapdoor spiders, and so on. So these, I'm suggesting, are kind of like analogues which we take from nature. Fourthly, nature as a model, which I think Mick's going to talk about in a moment. Animal constructions, this movement which we refer to as biomimicry, where animal construction provide us with models for our own constructions. Fifthly, nature provides aesthetic inspiration. We're all familiar with looking at beautiful spider webs, crystalline with the dew in the morning, the canopies of trees. And where I live in a dry rainforest north of Sydney. My favourite birds are the butcher birds with their duets every morning, and every duet is the same but always a little bit different. It's wonderful. Sixthly, insights which nature can provide. Another favourite of mine is the Italian designer Bruno Munari, who died in 1998. And Munari wrote, amongst a lot of other things, two wonderful little microcosmic essays, one on the orange and one on peas, where as an industrial designer he analysed an orange and he analysed peas from an industrial designer's point of view. And just to give you an example, because Munari, if you're not familiar with his work, is a very witty and amusing man. So for example, the orange, he says, to open the packing is very simple, so it's not necessary to use printed instructions for use. Gives you some idea of how Munari's thinking about it. And peas, he says, peas are food pills of various diameters, packing in double valve cases, very elegant in form, colour, material, semi-transparent and easy to open. And he goes on, I haven't got time to go on, but he says the novelty of this product is in the simplicity and at the same time the originality of the case. So here I think nature provides insights, in this case to an industrial designer, and who then can go on to design products. Finally, the final and seventh theme, I think, is the theme of humility. Because when faced with what nature is and what nature has achieved, you can't be anything but humble. And again, just reverting back to Pallasmaa, he says this, in terms of precision, it often surpasses human skills in construction and surpasses human structures in relative size when the body size of the builder is compared to the size of the structure. So I think when we look at what insects and animals create, the complexity, the relative strength, the tensile strength of a spider's web, for example, this leaves you completely awestruck. That's enough from me. I've already mentioned Mick Pearce. Some of you will know CH2 in Melbourne. Please welcome Mick Pearce.